Welcome back to Pete's Garage, and today we are going to talk fuel systems.
My name is Pete, and welcome to my garage.
So for those of you who don't know about this project, this is an E39 BMW that I have an LSA supercharged 6-liter installed in. Now, this thing originally came with a 2.5 liter inline 6, which let's be honest, it's going to have probably 2.5 times the horsepower that it had, maybe even close to 3 times the power this thing originally came with. So, needless to say, we are going to need a lot more fuel. Now, the fuel supply line that came on this is only a 5/16 line, and the fuel rail that I have on my LSA is actually 3/16, so it is the same thing as a -6 AN line. So I also need to step up my fuel pump because I am planning on about 650 to the tires. We're going to put out about, I'm assuming, 12 and a half pounds of boost with our pulley combination here. So I expect this thing to make some juice. So we're going to need some of the Go Fast juice, and that is fuel. Speaking of fuel, well, especially right now, fuel has kind of gone back up in price. It was cheap there for a while, but now it's going back up. And if you are boosted, it's always a good idea to step it up to E85, and that's what I'm planning on doing. So I hope I have purchased a big enough fuel supply setup. Let me know what you think about what I have, but here, let me show you what I got. All right, if you have tried to purchase any fuel supply components anytime recently since this whole COVID thing, you'll know that it's kind of difficult to get some of this stuff. So I originally was going to go with a Walbro 450 pump, and that thing was on intergalactic back order. So what I ended up doing is I bought the Summit brand pump. The Walbro 450 is kind of a known pump that everybody kind of goes with, or a lot of people go with, and it's actually cheaper than the Summit brand pump, but the Summit one I was able to get after about, I think it was a 2-week delay or something like that. So I have a Summit fuel pump, and this one is rated the same ratings as the Walbro. It's TI Automotive on there, and let's see if you can see that. I don't know how well it's going to focus. But I got this pump that I'm going to install in the factory basket. I also got the installation kit for said pump, and this kit contains the wiring harness that connects to that to run through the pass-through, the terminals, the sock, you know, hopefully all the stuff that I need to make this pump work with my setup. Okay, so I also hit up Deatschwerks for one of their fuel pressure regulators. And this one right here is an adjustable boost reference fuel pressure regulator. So I'm going to have the adjustment right there so I can set my base fuel pressure, and then I have this port right here to where I can run a vacuum line or a boost reference line. So anytime this thing's under boost, for every pound of boost that I make, it's going to also increase my fuel pressure that amount. So therefore, it's going to keep my pressure drop or delta across my injectors the same. Okay, so another box from Deatschwerks right here. This is their 65 pound per hour injectors. I know a lot of people run 60 pound injectors for mild boost builds on turbo setups. However, I want to run E85. These injectors are actually rated at 65 pounds of fuel flow per hour at only 3 bar. Well, this is a GM setup, and we actually run everything at 4 bar. So at 58 PSI instead of 43.5 PSI. So that actually increases these things to believe, roughly 85-pound injectors. So these are equivalent to about 85-pound injectors. It's got flow data and everything with them, and then you can also download it on the internet. So getting a set of injectors that has good data really helps out your tuner. Now these right here were actually a pretty good deal, and I guess we'll see how good of a deal they are when we go to tune it and see how easy that is to tune. Now, speaking of E85, if you don't have some kind of sensor to be able to tell the computer what type of fuel you have, then it won't know to be able to compensate, because it requires about 30% more fuel to run E85 than it does to run gasoline, because it's 85% ethanol compared to, I guess, only 10% ethanol on most fuels, or even 0% if it's just total gasoline. I could just run all the time on E85 and tune it that way, or I could run it just on gasoline, but I like the flexibility to be able to stop at any gas station, especially if I'm out somewhere where the E85 stations aren't real convenient. Where I live, I didn't have an E85 station even near me until just a couple months ago, when a brand new Casey's was installed up the street from me, and they got E85, so score. But in order to do that, I got a GM flex fuel sensor that I'm also going to have to mount into this setup. And so this thing can tell my GM PCM, or the engine's computer, that this thing has E85 in it, and then it can blend it anywhere from, let's just say if it was half gasoline and half E85, therefore it can blend in between the two, and I won't have to run a full tank of either. And so this is where the magic happens, right there on the fuel system. Make a lot of power on E85, and it's a lot safer for the engine because of the knock resistance that E85 or ethanol fuels actually give you. So there's a little bit of a safety barrier with when you run E85 than if you're running pure gasoline. And I also bought a Summit brand -8 fuel filter to keep any nasty particles out of my fuel pressure regulator. So I'm going to put that before the pressure regulator. So here is the fuel rail for the LSA setup. Now, what kind of sucks is that the inlet, this is -6 right here, on the inlet is actually on the passenger side of the engine. I'm going to have to run the fuel line over here, and you can see the small little fuel line from the factory right there. So I can't use that fuel line. It'll be too much of a pressure drop trying to push the amount of fuel that I'm trying to push through that line. So we're going to step it up in size, and I'm going to run my line up through there and then have to follow all the way around the back to get over to here, which kind of sucks. But it is what it is. All right, so the good thing about this BMW is I don't have to drop the gas tank to get to the fuel pump. I do have to remove this back seat though. I need to figure out which one of these is my actual fuel pump and which one is my auxiliary fuel pump. Which this one, okay, this one's just a level sensor. All right, so this side over here only has a couple of small wires. So this one I'm pretty sure is going to be just a fuel level sensor. Okay, that one over there though, I think is going to be the one. So let's go over there. All right, these are Phillips head screws. Look, I got a couple big wires right there. So these bigger gauge wires are going to be the ones for my fuel pump. That really doesn't look like it's ever been touched there. Now I don't want any of this dirt going into the gas tank, so I want to make sure I get it all cleaned up before I pop it out. Last thing I want is this dirt being in my injectors. Alright. Now that that's off, now I can pull this out. Now there's going to be, I believe, a tube that connects both sides of this tank. There we go. I'll just release a couple tabs and the bucket comes out. Okay, so here is my new fuel pump. This one right here is 450 liters per hour. There's my stock fuel pump. They're about similar heights. I think they're about the same diameter to fit into that little bucket right there. The filter that goes on the filter sock on the bottom is a little bit different, but I think it should still work for me. And one of the first things I need to do is I need to get this old fuel pump out of this little bracket, which looks easy enough. So it just has some little tabs right there that I pulled back. A couple of them. Well, there's 3 of them, so hopefully... Oh wait, before I do that I gotta take this filter thing off the bottom. I think it's coming out, but slowly. There we go. Ah, man, that thing didn't want to give it up. Okay, so somehow I have to fit this into this, and it's definitely bigger. Okay, so I cut a little bit more of that piece off just to see if this will give me a little better fit. Oh yeah, okay. So that's going to be better. And then I can clamp this kind of back together around this thing. I really want it to hold in there nice and straight. So I'm worried about the zip ties. However, there's zip ties on here and they feel perfectly fine. So I'm hoping the plastic on these zip ties will work. Alright, so I made a couple notches right in there. Hopefully you can see that. So that's where my zip tie is going to sit. So hopefully I can get that to hold it tight. And I hope a zip tie is going to be enough to hold this in here. And now I'm going to zip tie the top. Hopefully this pump will stay put now that it's in there pretty tight. And if I have any problems, I guess I can revisit this design, but that should hold it in there. If it wants to come out, maybe I can replace that zip tie with a worm gear clamp or something like that. But really, that sucker's in there pretty good right now. So, now that I got that hooked up, basically I need to get the wiring and this other hose hooked up. Now, I'm wanting to run -8 fuel lines. The way this pump runs up to the top of this, that line right there is quite a bit smaller than this one. And I'm going to be running -8 lines, so I really need to actually kind of clean this thing up. And what I'm going to end up needing to do is I'm going to have to run another fitting that pokes out through there that I can run my fuel to get it out, to get the fuel to come out. So really, in reality, I think I need to probably get a different hose than this that I can submerge into there. And I was expecting my installation kit to actually have a piece of hose, considering it has hose clamps. However, there's no hose in there. So I don't know if that's an oversight or what. Now, normally I would splice and solder, I would solder the wires. However, in this particular case, I don't know how well heat shrink is going to necessarily work in an environment that's, you know, constantly submerged in fuel. So I'm thinking I'm just going to go with some butt connectors. So I'm going to see if I can just butt connector this thing together. And man, I really like these wire strippers. They work pretty well. And the problem is I only have one of these 16 to 14 gauge wire ones, and this is for like 18 gauge and smaller. Okay, they fit. Barely. I don't really even want to be running -6. I want to actually run -8. So I'm going to run -6 out of the tank, out of the pump right here, and up to here. And I'm going to have to put a bulkhead fitting into this thing and run -8 off of that all the way to my fuel pressure regulator. All right, so it looks like Deatschwerks and Summit Racing have thrown up all over my car here some fuel system parts. So pretty awesome. I got myself some stuff from Deatschwerks. In order to make this fuel pump hat work, this 5/16 line is going to have to go. So I got a bulkhead fitting right here from Deatschwerks, and that's going to be a -6, and that matches the outlet of the pump right there. So I'm going to have a -6 line replacing this line right here from my fuel pump that's in the hat. Also, off of that, on the top of this, you're going to see, instead of this tiny little line that's right there, I'm going to have, you'll see I'll have my -8 line coming out the top right there, and that'll be leading over to the rest of the fuel system. Speaking of the rest of the fuel system, I got -8 right there, which 8 is 8/16, or the same thing as 1/2 inch fuel line, braided hose, that's going to run over to this Summit Racing filter. So this is my fuel filter right here, the Summit Racing one. It's going to come out of that filter, and then it's going to run to this Deatschwerks 1000 boost reference fuel pressure regulator that I got. So we have -8 coming in, and then I'm also going to have the -8 as an outlet that goes up to the fuel rail. And then the return line, after I set my fuel pressure here, this is a -6 return line that is also going to go through this flex fuel sensor right here. I have the Deatschwerks connectors for hooking up to a 3/8 fuel line right there. So this is 3/8 connector that goes to a -6 line that'll hook some hoses to that. So then I'll be able to run flex fuel right there. So first things first, I need to get this bulkhead fitting installed into a good place on the bottom of this fuel hat right there. All right, so this is my bulkhead fitting right here that's going to go through this hat right there. And you can see it's got a nylon washer and a nut for both sides, so it sandwiches between there. I need to find a good spot to put this, because this is going to connect to my 3/8 hose right there. And it's kind of looking like, alright, so I need to make sure that my float right here, it doesn't get caught on that. So I need the hose to run this side of it, and it looks like I got a really good spot right there for that fitting. So I'm going to target the center of that over here. So it's going to be landing somewhere in there. Okay, so the size of this is slightly less than 9/16 of an inch, which is going to be just a little bit bigger than a 1/2 inch. So I'm probably going to, I don't have, my drill bits only go up to a 1/2 inch. So this does have a 9/16 spot on there. I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not. And let's see where we're going to start drilling. This should be pretty easy to drill because it's just plastic. So I do want to try to get in the middle of all this though. So I want to try to get in the middle. Just making sure I don't have anything coming through the back side. These unit bits work really, really well on plastic, I can tell you that. So a 1/2 inch is clearly not going to be big enough, so I'm going to have to step it up a little bit with the step bit. But I got to go real slow, so I don't want to overdo it. Make one mistake here and you cost yourself a couple $100. Having to get a new cinder and housing. Okay. There we go. All right, so you can see this has got this little nylon washer there that's going to go on the top. Got another nylon washer from the bottom side. And the the aluminum nut here. So just got to tighten up my fitting there. Tighten up this nut right there on that fitting. All right, let's go throw this thing back in the car. All right, so down in this fuel bucket down here, on this left side right there, you can see there is a little hole, which is basically the passageway that I need to line up this little spot right here with this O-ring. So that piece right there has to slide in there, and then that also should allow the other pieces to snap in, these two sides over here on the side. So let me get this dropped in here. Hopefully this works the way I'm hoping. Okay, it looks like my filter sock, my pickup there is in the right spot, so that's good. Okay, that snapped in. Now I need to figure out how this went. There's a lot of hose right here. Hopefully that doesn't kink. Looks like this piece has to go in way over there. Alright, now come on, slide down in there. There we go. Okay. Alright, I got my Dash 8 nylon braided hose that allegedly is good for E85 and gasoline. I guess we'll see. I've got some AN hose fitting ends. I got to make up my hoses, and then I will be able to put them on the car. There we go. My first hose fitting is on there. I can go hook this up to my fuel pump, and then I can route the rest of the hose further down and see how long I need to make it. All right, so in the vehicle, I'm going to have the regulator, and I'm going to have a little pre-filter before the regulator. And it's going to sit something like that. So I need a small section of hose in between the two, and it looks like about 4.5 inches is what I'm going to end up needing to make a little piece of hose right there. So I'm going to cut about, you can see I got it routed down all the way over here. So I'm going to cut off about 4.5 inches off the end of this hose, and I will make a hose that goes in between those two. And where I shoved it through, I'm definitely going to have to clean all that out and everything. Or maybe I'll just chop the end off of that because it got beat up pretty good trying to shove it through where the gas tank is. But no big deal. Just cut off, an inch or so off of that. Bam, here's this piece to go from my regulator to my filter. Look at that, beautiful. So I need to mount this fuel pressure regulator up here underneath the car. And I put a little mark right there, and I think I'm gonna mount it about right there. So I have an inlet coming in over here, an outlet back to the tank for the return, and then over here I have the outlet that goes to the engine. Now I could just take a self-tapping screw and run it through there. Sure, I guess that could work, but instead I think what I'm going to do is actually grind this off a little bit, the paint off right there, and I'm going to weld this bolt right there to be like a stud that I can bolt this thing to, so I don't have self-tapping screws sticking up into my carpet. All right, there we go. I got bare metal. Now I'll just weld that bolt to it. All right, so I just need to clamp it up so it stays up, but you can see I've got my -8 feed all the way down through a fuel filter, up into the regulator. From the regulator, up through there, where the original fuel lines went, up to the engine compartment. So the next thing I gotta do is I have a flex fuel sensor, right? So this sensor right here is gonna sense whether I'm running gas or E85, and I'm going to change my tune accordingly, and it'll automatically do it depending on what the mixture is in the tank. So this is a -6 line that I'm going to route from the fuel pressure regulator right here. And I'm gonna run the return back to the tank. So I'm just checking the alcohol content of the return on the fuel system, which is basically the same thing as checking the feed. And then I'm gonna make some clamps that hold these lines up and keep them off the, keep them from dangling and everything. All right, let's see if I can get this to go up by that other fuel line to where I can plug it into the fuel return. Oh yeah, look at that. I think it's up there. Now I gotta lower it and pull it through. All right, going inside of the vehicle here. Here's where my return line hooks. However, I just have it cut off. I gotta get that clamp off of there. But I can feel right here, ow. The stainless steel braid kind of poking me. Things are nylon, but inside there's still that braid. So I'll pull that through. And since this is just gonna clamp on there, all I gotta do is cut it off and clamp it. All right, now you see it, the fuel system is complete. And I just need to get my vacuum line hooked up to there. That should be easy enough with a little 90-degree elbow. And it's like perfect, right where it needs to be. My vacuum line, boom. Now here's my flex fuel sensor. I'm gonna have to run my wiring to it. And you can see my lines. They'll be held up a little better once I put the finishing touches. But fuel system, bam, that's a big hurdle right there. All right, thanks for watching. Stay tuned next time. We're gonna work on the throttle and we're gonna fill up these holes. We're gonna try to get pushing and everything and plumb this the rest of the way as far as transmission cooler lines, AC lines, power steering hoses, all that, coolant hoses. There's a lot to do whenever you're trying to plumb a project like this when you're in the home stretch. I gotta wire it too. So stay tuned. Appreciate you watching. Check back. Thanks for watching Pete's Garage.